In a small, quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Atlanta, life was anything but easy for 17-year-old Malik Johnson. The air here was thick with the weight of struggle, where dreams often felt like distant stars too far to reach. Malik lived in a modest two-bedroom apartment with his mother, younger brother, and sister. His father had walked out when Malik was just 10, leaving behind empty promises and unpaid bills. Since then, it had been up to Malik and his mom to hold everything together. Malik's days were long and tiring. He woke up before sunrise every morning to catch the bus to school. Once there, he tried hard to focus on his studies, even though his mind often wandered to the endless list of responsibilities waiting for him at home. After school, instead of hanging out with friends or playing sports like other kids his age, Malik worked odd jobs to help support his family. Some days he mowed lawns in the nearby suburbs. Other days he helped load boxes at the local grocery store. Whatever money he earned went straight into the household fund: rent, groceries, electricity. Nothing was wasted. Despite all this, Malik refused to let bitterness take root in his heart. He carried himself with quiet pride, always believing that better days were ahead. One thing kept him going: running. Running wasn't just a hobby for Malik. It was his escape, his sanctuary. When he laced up his worn-out sneakers and hit the pavement, the world around him seemed to fade away. No more worries about unpaid bills or whether they'd have enough food for dinner. On those runs, Malik could imagine himself somewhere else, somewhere brighter. Maybe crossing the finish line of a big race, maybe standing on stage accepting an award, maybe walking through the doors of a college he never thought he could afford. But Malik didn't own fancy gear like the runners he saw on TV or in magazines. His sneakers were patched together with duct tape, and his shorts were hand-me-downs from his cousin. Still, he trained harder than anyone else. Every evening after work, rain or shine, Malik ran. He mapped out routes through his neighborhood, timing himself as he pushed harder and faster each day. Sometimes people would stop and watch him pass by, shaking their heads in disbelief. "That boy's got spirit," they'd say, not realizing how much truth those words held. The marathon coming up in a few weeks was Malik's golden ticket, or so he hoped. It was Atlanta's biggest annual race, drawing thousands of participants from all over the country. For most, it was just another event on their calendars, another chance to compete or show off their skills. But for Malik, it meant everything. If he could place high enough, maybe one of the scouts watching would notice him. Maybe they'd offer him a scholarship to a good college, something his family could never afford otherwise. College wasn't just a dream for Malik, it was his lifeline. It was the only way he could break free from the cycle of poverty that had trapped his family for generations. As the marathon approached, Malik poured every ounce of energy into preparing. He studied videos of professional runners, analyzing their techniques and strategies. He practiced pacing himself, learning how to conserve energy during the early miles so he wouldn't burn out later. And whenever doubt crept in, whispering that he didn't belong among the elite athletes who would be competing, Malik reminded himself why he was doing this. Not for fame or glory, but for his family. For his little brother, who loved hearing stories about superheroes saving the day. For his sister, whose laughter lit up even the darkest rooms. For his mom, whose hands were calloused from years of working tirelessly to give them a better life. On the morning of the marathon, Malik stood at the starting line, surrounded by hundreds of other runners. They stretched and bounced on their toes, chatting excitedly about their training routines and goals for the race. Malik stayed silent, focusing on the road ahead. He glanced down at his shoes, now creaking and barely holding together, and smiled faintly. These shoes had carried him through countless miles, through pain and exhaustion, through moments when giving up seemed like the easier choice. Today, they would carry him toward his future. The gun fired, signaling the start of the race, and the crowd surged forward. Malik settled into a steady rhythm, weaving between runners as he found his pace. The streets were lined with cheering spectators, holding signs and ringing cowbells. Children waved tiny flags, and volunteers handed out cups of water at every station. For a moment, Malik allowed himself to soak it all in. The energy, the excitement, the sense that anything was possible. But deep down he knew this wasn't just a race. It was a test of endurance, determination, and heart, and Malik had plenty of all three. As the miles ticked by, Malik focused on putting one foot in front of the other. His legs burned, and his lungs ached, but he kept pushing. Around mile 8, he noticed the gap between him and the lead pack widening slightly. Doubt began to creep in again, whispering cruel reminders of how different he was from the others. Their sleek uniforms, sponsored gear, and confident strides made him feel out of place, but Malik shook off the negativity, reminding himself why he was here. This wasn't about fitting in. It was about proving to himself, and to the world, that he belonged. By mile 12, Malik had fallen back into a comfortable groove. The sun beat down mercilessly and sweat dripped from his brow, but he pressed on. Each step brought him closer to his goal, closer to the life he envisioned for himself and his family. As he rounded a corner, the roar of the crowd grew louder, fueling his determination. Somewhere out there, his mom, brother, and sister were watching, cheering him on. That thought alone gave him strength. Little did Malik know, the hardest part of the day was still ahead. What happened next would change his life in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. But for now, all he could do was run. One step, one breath, one heartbeat at a time. As Malik pushed forward in the marathon, each stride felt heavier than the last. The sun blazed overhead, relentless and unforgiving, turning the pavement into a scorching expanse beneath his feet. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes, but he wiped it away with the back of his hand and kept moving. His legs screamed for relief, his lungs burned with every breath, and yet he refused to slow down. This was his moment, his chance to prove himself, not just to the world but to himself. Around mile 18, the crowd along the sidelines began to thin out. The initial excitement that had fueled the early miles was fading, replaced by exhaustion, and determination etched onto the faces of the remaining runners. Malik stayed focused, keeping his gaze fixed on the road ahead. But then something caught his attention, a commotion up ahead near the curb. At first, he thought it might be a runner who had simply stopped to catch their breath or adjust their shoes. That happened often during marathons. But as he drew closer, his stomach tightened. A young woman lay sprawled on the ground, her bright athletic gear standing out against the dull gray of the pavement. Her blonde hair fanned out around her head, and her face was pale, almost ghostly. Around her, a small group of spectators had gathered, whispering anxiously and pointing toward the fallen runner. Some people hesitated, unsure of what to do, while others seemed content to snap photos or record videos on their phones. A few runners slowed down briefly to glance at the scene before speeding up again, unwilling to sacrifice precious seconds in the race. Malik's heart raced, not from the exertion of running, but from concern. He didn't know this girl, but he couldn't ignore her. It wasn't in his nature. Without a second thought, he veered off course, leaving the steady rhythm of the race behind. As he approached, he could see that she wasn't moving. Panic bubbled inside him, but he forced himself to stay calm. He dropped to one knee beside her, scanning her body for signs of injury. Her chest rose and fell faintly. She was breathing, but barely. "Hey," Malik said softly, gently tapping her cheek. "Can you hear me? Are you okay?" There was no response. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder, a mix of concern and curiosity swirling around him. Malik knew he had to act quickly. He remembered the basic first aid techniques he'd learned years ago during a free community workshop hosted by a local nonprofit. Back then, he hadn't paid much attention, thinking it was just another boring seminar. Now, those lessons came, rushing back like a lifeline. He tilted her head slightly to open her airway, ensuring she could breathe more easily. Then he checked her pulse. It was weak but steady. She didn't appear to have any visible injuries, so he ruled out a fall or collision. Dehydration? Heat stroke? Either seemed likely given the sweltering conditions. Malik grabbed a water bottle from a nearby volunteer station and carefully poured some onto his hand, patting her forehead to cool her down. He spoke to her softly, trying to rouse her. "Come on, wake up," he urged, his voice firm but gentle. "You're going to be okay." Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Finally, her eyelids fluttered open, revealing dazed blue eyes. She blinked several times, clearly disoriented, before focusing on Malik's face. For a brief moment, their gazes locked and Malik saw a flicker of recognition in her expression, a silent thank you that needed no words. "Help is coming," Malik assured her, noticing the distant wail of sirens growing louder. Paramedics arrived within moments, pushing through the crowd with a stretcher. They took over immediately, assessing her condition and loading her onto the stretcher. One of the medics turned to Malik, nodding appreciatively. "You did good, kid," the paramedic said. "If you hadn't stopped, things could have been a lot worse." Malik nodded, feeling a strange mix of pride and guilt. Pride because he'd done the right thing. Guilt because he knew he'd lost valuable time in the race. Still, he didn't regret his decision. How could he? Saving someone's life was worth far more than any trophy or medal. As the ambulance pulled away, sirens blaring, Malik stood there for a moment, catching his breath. The cheering crowd and pounding footsteps of other runners faded into the background. He glanced down at his sneakers, now dusty and scuffed from kneeling on the ground. They were already falling apart, but this latest wear and tear didn't bother him. What mattered was that he'd made a difference. With a deep sigh, Malik turned back toward the race course. The lead pack was long gone, and even the middle group was far ahead. He was alone now, surrounded only by the rhythmic thud of his own footsteps as he resumed running. Each step felt heavier than before, not just because of physical fatigue, but because of the weight of what had just happened. Who was that girl? Was she okay? Would she remember him? These questions lingered in the back of his mind, but Malik pushed them aside. There was still work to do. He reminded himself why he was here, to run for his family, for his future, for the dream that had driven him to train day after day. He wasn't about to give up now. The final miles of the marathon were grueling. Every muscle in Malik's body ached and his energy reserves were nearly depleted. Yet somehow he found the strength to keep going. Maybe it was the adrenaline from earlier. Maybe it was sheer willpower. Whatever it was, it carried him across the finish line, where a smattering of applause greeted him. It wasn't the roaring ovation reserved for the winners, but it was enough to remind him that finishing was an accomplishment in itself. As Malik crossed the line, he bent over, hands on his knees, gasping for air. Volunteers handed him a bottle of water and draped a foil blanket over his shoulders. He accepted both gratefully, his mind still replaying the events of the past hour. He wondered if anyone else had noticed what he'd done. The girl collapsing, his quick thinking, the paramedics arriving just in time. Did it matter? Probably not. Most people ran marathons to win or set records, not to stop and help strangers. But for Malik, stopping had been the only option. Later, as he sat on a bench sipping water and stretching his sore muscles, Malik allowed himself to reflect. He thought about how different his life might have been if someone had stopped to help his family when they were struggling. He thought about the countless times he'd wished for a hero to swoop in and fix everything. And now today he realized that sometimes heroes weren't caped figures flying through the sky. They were ordinary people making extraordinary choices. Unbeknownst to Malik, cameras had captured the entire incident. Spectators recording the marathon had zoomed in on the dramatic rescue, capturing Malik's actions in vivid detail. Social media exploded with posts about the unknown hero who had risked his race to save a stranger. Hashtags like Tron Real Life Hero and Marathon Rescue began trending, spreading his story far beyond the streets of Atlanta. Meanwhile, the girl he had saved, Victoria Langston, was recovering in the hospital, already determined to find out more about the boy who had changed her life forever. But Malik knew none of this. All he knew was that he had done what he believed was right. And as he walked home that evening, exhausted but proud, he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted not just in the marathon but in his own journey. The morning after the marathon, Malik woke up feeling a mix of emotions. His legs were sore, his body ached from head to toe, and yet there was a strange sense of satisfaction lingering in his chest. He had finished the race. Not as fast as he'd hoped, but he had crossed the finish line. More importantly, he had done something far greater than winning. He had saved a life. Still, as he lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling of his small room, doubts began creeping in. What if stopping to help that girl cost him his chance at a scholarship? What if no one even noticed what he had done? In the grand scheme of things, would it matter? These thoughts swirled in his mind like leaves, caught in a whirlwind, but Malik pushed them aside. He reminded himself that doing the right thing wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about being human. And yet, deep down, he couldn't help but wonder if anyone else knew how much he had sacrificed for that moment. Meanwhile, Miles, away in a luxurious penthouse overlooking downtown Atlanta, Victoria Langston stirred awake in her hospital bed. The sterile white walls and faint beeping of machines surrounded her, a stark contrast to the opulence she was used to. She blinked slowly, trying to piece together the fragmented memories of the previous day. Bits and pieces came back to her, the heat of the sun, the pounding rhythm of her feet hitting the pavement, and then nothing, just darkness. Then a face, a young man's face, kind and determined, leaning over her. His voice calm and reassuring, telling her everything would be okay. Victoria reached for the glass of water on the bedside table, sipping it slowly as her father entered the room. Richard Langston, billionaire tech mogul and one of the most influential men in the country, looked both relieved and furious. Relief because his only daughter was safe, fury because she had been in danger in the first place. "Are you all right?" he asked, his tone sharp but laced with concern. "I'm fine, Dad," Victoria replied, rolling her eyes slightly. "Just dehydrated," the doctor said. "I'll be out of here soon." Richard sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "You shouldn't have been running in this heat without proper preparation. Your mother is beside herself." Victoria smirked faintly. Her parents loved her deeply, but they often treated her like a fragile porcelain doll rather than a capable 22-year-old woman. Still, she appreciated their worry. After all, not everyone had parents who cared so much. But as her father continued lecturing her about safety protocols and hiring private trainers, Victoria's thoughts drifted back to the boy who had saved her. "Dad," she interrupted suddenly, her voice soft but firm. "Do you know who helped me yesterday? There was someone, a runner. He stopped when I collapsed. He saved my life." Richard paused mid-sentence, his brow furrowing. "A runner? Someone actually stopped?" "Yes," Victoria said, nodding emphatically. "He didn't hesitate. He checked on me, gave me water, stayed until the paramedics arrived. If it weren't for him—" Her voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. The weight of what could have happened hit her again, sending a shiver down her spine. Richard's expression softened. "That's remarkable. We need to find out who this person is. Whoever they are, they deserve our gratitude." And so, the search began. Richard Langston was not a man accustomed to waiting or uncertainty. Within hours, his team of assistants, lawyers and investigators sprang into action. Security footage from the marathon route was reviewed frame by frame. Social media posts went viral, with countless users sharing videos and photos of the rescue. One clip in particular stood out, a shaky cell phone video capturing Malik kneeling beside Victoria, his face focused and compassionate as he tended to her. The caption read, "Unknown hero saves runner during Atlanta marathon." Victoria watched the video over and over, her heart swelling with admiration for the stranger. Something about him struck her, his quiet confidence, the determination in his movements, the way he seemed completely unfazed by the chaos around him. It wasn't just his actions that impressed her, it was the selflessness behind them. Most people would have kept running, unwilling to risk losing precious time in such a competitive race. But not him. He had chosen humanity over victory. While Victoria pieced together the mystery of her rescuer, Malik remained entirely unaware of the storm brewing in the world outside his neighborhood. That afternoon, he returned to his usual routine, picking up extra shifts at the grocery store to help cover the bills. As he stocked shelves and bagged groceries, customers chatted idly about the marathon. Some mentioned the dramatic rescue, though none connected it to him. To them, the unknown hero was just another story, a fleeting topic of conversation before moving on to sports scores or celebrity gossip. But late that evening, as Malik walked home from work, something unusual happened. A sleek black car pulled up alongside him, its tinted windows gleaming under the streetlights. For a moment, Malik froze, unsure of what to expect. Cars like this didn't usually appear in his part of town unless they were lost or looking for trouble. But instead of speeding past, the car slowed to a stop, and the rear passenger window rolled down. Malik's breath hitched as he saw who was inside. A young woman sat there, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, her blue eyes piercing yet warm. She wore a simple hoodie and jeans, but there was an air of elegance about her that made her stand out. It took Malik a second to realize who she was, the girl from the marathon, the one he had saved. "Hi," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Do you remember me?" Malik blinked, momentarily stunned. Yeah, I do. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, thanks to you," she replied, smiling gratefully. "My name's Victoria. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did. You saved my life." Malik shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. It was nothing. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Victoria said firmly, shaking her head. "Not everyone would have stopped. Trust me, I know. You put yourself on the line for me, and I'll never forget that. Can we talk for a minute?" Before Malik could answer, the car door opened, and Victoria stepped out. Up close, she looked even more striking, but also approachable. There was no trace of arrogance or entitlement in her demeanor, just genuine curiosity and gratitude. She introduced herself again, explaining that she had tracked him down after seeing footage of the rescue online. "I wanted to meet you," she continued, "to say thank you properly, and maybe offer something in return." Malik frowned, suspicion creeping into his mind. "Look, I don't want anything. I just did what anyone should have done." "I understand," Victoria said quickly, holding up her hands, "and I respect that. But sometimes doing the right thing deserves more than just a thank you. Let me explain." She told him about her family, her father's wealth, his business empire, and the resources at their disposal. She explained that she wanted to help him somehow, to repay the kindness he had shown her. At first, Malik resisted. Accepting charity felt wrong, especially when he had worked so hard to get where he was. But Victoria persisted, assuring him that it wasn't charity. It was an investment in someone who clearly had potential. "You remind me of myself," she admitted. "Not the money part, obviously, but the drive, the determination. You're going places, Malik, I can see it, and I want to help you get there." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For years, Malik had dreamed of escaping the cycle of poverty that trapped his family. He had envisioned a future where he could provide for them, where he could build a better life. Now, standing in front of him, was someone offering him a chance to make those dreams a reality. It was overwhelming, almost too good to be true. Still, Malik hesitated. "Why are you doing this?" he asked finally. "We don't even know each other." Victoria smiled softly. "Because you reminded me what really matters. You stopped when no one else did. You cared when it wasn't convenient. That kind of courage and compassion is rare. And honestly, the world needs more people like you." For the first time in days, Malik allowed himself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Not just for himself, but for his family. If accepting Victoria's help meant creating a brighter future for them, then perhaps it wasn't pride or stubbornness holding him back. It was fear. Fear of failure, fear of disappointment, fear of stepping into the unknown. As they stood there under the dim glow of the streetlight, two worlds colliding in the most unexpected way, Malik realized something profound. Life wasn't always fair, and opportunities didn't come knocking every day. Sometimes you had to take a leap of faith even if it scared you. And so, after a long pause, he nodded. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's talk." Little did Malik know, this decision would change everything. Not just for him, but for Victoria too. Their lives, once separated by privilege and circumstance, were now intertwined in ways neither of them could have imagined. The next day, Malik found himself sitting in a cozy cafe downtown, a place he had never been to before. It was worlds apart from the corner stores and fast food joints that dotted his neighborhood. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods, and soft jazz played in the background. Everything about the setting felt foreign yet intriguing. Across the table sat Victoria, her demeanor as warm and genuine as it had been the night before. She had insisted on meeting again to discuss how she could help him, and despite his initial hesitation, Malik agreed. "I want you to know this isn't charity," Victoria began, leaning forward slightly. Her blue eyes locked onto his, earnest and unwavering. "It's an opportunity for both of us." Malik nodded slowly, still unsure of what to say. He sipped the hot chocolate she had ordered for him, letting its sweetness linger on his tongue. It was rich and creamy, unlike anything he'd ever tasted. For a moment, he allowed himself to enjoy the novelty of it all. The ambiance, the drink, the company. But beneath the surface, questions churned in his mind. What did she mean by opportunity? And why was she going out of her way to help someone like him? Victoria seemed to sense his unease. She smiled softly and leaned back, in her chair, giving him space to process. "Let me explain something," she said. "When I collapsed during that marathon, I wasn't just physically drained, I was mentally exhausted too. My life, it's not as perfect as it looks from the outside. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning under the weight of it all." Malik listened intently, surprised by her vulnerability. He had assumed that being born into wealth meant having everything handed to you on a silver platter. But as Victoria spoke, he realized that money didn't shield you from struggles. It just created different ones. "You stopped when no one else did," she continued. "You risked your race, your chance at recognition, just to make sure I was okay. That kind of selflessness is rare, Malik. It reminded me of what truly matters. Kindness, humanity, connection. And honestly, I think the world needs more people like you." Her words struck a chord deep within him. Growing up in poverty, Malik had often felt invisible, overlooked by society. People judged him based on where he came from, assuming he didn't have much to offer. But here was Victoria, someone who lived in a completely different world, telling him that his actions mattered, that he mattered. "Okay," Malik said finally, his voice steady but tinged with curiosity. "So, what exactly are you offering?" Victoria's face lit up, as if she had been waiting for him to ask. "First, education," she said confidently. "I talked to my dad last night, and he's willing to fund a full scholarship for you at any university you choose. Tuition, books, housing, all of it covered. You won't have to worry about working multiple jobs or taking loans. Just focus on your studies." Malik's jaw dropped. A scholarship? Fully funded? It sounded too good to be true. He thought back to all the nights he had spent poring over textbooks, dreaming of attending college, but knowing it was financially impossible. Now suddenly that dream was within reach. "And second," Victoria added, her tone growing even more enthusiastic, "an internship at my dad's company. It's one of the leading tech firms in the country, and they're always looking for fresh talent. You'll get hands-on experience, mentorship, and a chance to build connections. Who knows? Maybe you'll discover a passion you didn't even know you had." Malik blinked, trying to wrap his head around everything she was saying. An internship at a top-tier tech company. It sounded like something out of a movie. Yet, here he was, sitting across from a billionaire's daughter who genuinely believed in him. "But why?" Malik asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Why are you doing all this for me?" Victoria hesitated for a moment as if searching for the right words. Then she smiled, her expression softening. Because you deserve it. Because the world should reward people who do the right thing even when it's hard. And because, she paused, her gaze dropping briefly before meeting his again, because I think we can learn from each other. You've already taught me so much about courage and compassion. Maybe I can help you see the opportunities you've earned. Her sincerity was undeniable, and Malik felt a lump rise in his throat. He had spent years carrying the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, believing that success was something he had to achieve entirely on his own. But now, faced with Victoria's generosity, he realized that accepting help didn't make him weak, it made him human. Still, doubt lingered in the corners of his mind. Accepting such a gift felt overwhelming, almost intimidating. What if he failed? What if he let her down? As if reading his thoughts, Victoria reached across the table and placed a reassuring hand on his. You don't have to decide right now, she said gently. Take some time to think about it. Talk to your family. Whatever you choose, I'll respect it. But please, don't let fear hold you back. This is your chance to create the future you've always dreamed of. Later that evening, Malik returned home, his mind racing with possibilities. His mother greeted him at the door, her brow furrowed with concern. Where were you, Malik? You're usually home by now. He hesitated, unsure of how to explain everything that had happened. Finally, he took a deep breath and told her the whole story, from saving Victoria during the marathon to their meeting at the cafe, from the scholarship offer to the internship proposal. As he spoke, he watched his mother's expression shift from confusion to disbelief to awe. Are you serious? She asked, her voice trembling. A full scholarship? From a billionaire's family? Malik nodded, feeling a mix of grotesque emotions, pride, gratitude, and a touch of guilt. Yeah, Mom, it's real, but I don't know if I should accept it. It feels too big. His mother stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head firmly. Don't you dare turn this down, Malik Johnson. Do you hear me? This is your chance to change our lives, to give your brother and sister the future they deserve. You've worked so hard for this. Don't let fear stop you now. Her words hit home. Malik had always put his family first, sacrificing his own dreams to ensure theirs stayed alive. Now here was an opportunity to do both, to chase his ambitions while securing a better life for them. The thought filled him with a strange mix of excitement and responsibility. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Malik replayed the conversation with Victoria over and over in his mind. He imagined walking through the doors of a prestigious university, sitting in lecture halls filled with eager students, learning things that would expand his horizons. He pictured himself interning at a cutting-edge tech company, surrounded by brilliant minds and innovative ideas. Most of all, he envisioned a future where his family no longer struggled to make ends meet, a future where they could live without constant worry. By morning, Malik had made up his mind. He would accept Victoria Zuar's offer, not because he needed rescuing, but because he wanted to prove that he was worthy of it. He wanted to show the world and himself that kindness and hard work could lead to extraordinary outcomes. The following day, Malik met Victoria once again, this time at a park near her penthouse. She greeted him with a bright smile, clearly eager to hear his decision. When he told her he was ready to move forward, her eyes sparkled with joy. I knew you'd come around, she said, laughing softly. You're going to do amazing things, Malik. I can feel it. As they walked together through the park, discussing the next steps, Malik couldn't help but marvel at how drastically his life had changed in just a few days. From a struggling teenager running marathons in patched-up sneakers to a young man on the brink of transformation, he felt like he was living someone else's story. Yet deep down he knew it was his journey, one shaped by resilience, compassion, and a little bit of unexpected luck. What neither of them realized, however, was that their bond was only beginning. In helping each other, they would uncover strengths they didn't know they possessed and forge a friendship that transcended privilege and circumstance. Together, they would navigate challenges, celebrate victories, and inspire those around them to believe in the power of humanity. The months that followed Malik's decision to accept Victoria's offer were nothing short of transformative. For the first time in his life, Malik felt a sense of stability and hope he had never dared to imagine. His days became a whirlwind of new experiences, enrolling in college courses, attending orientation sessions, and navigating the bustling campus filled with students from all walks of life. At the same time, he began his internship at Langston Tech, one of the most innovative companies in the country. Each step forward was both exhilarating and overwhelming, but Malik approached it all with determination and humility. Victoria played an integral role in helping him adjust to this massive shift. She wasn't just a benefactor, she became a mentor and friend. Whenever Malik felt out of place or doubted his abilities, Victoria was there to encourage him. "You belong here," she would say firmly, as if daring him to argue. And slowly, Malik started to believe her. At college, Malik quickly realized how different his background was from many of his peers. Most students came from privileged families, with parents who had attended Ivy League schools and connections that spanned industries. They wore designer clothes, carried expensive laptops, and spoke confidently about internships abroad or family businesses they were set to inherit. Meanwhile, Malik arrived on campus with second-hand textbooks, a refurbished laptop provided by the university, and stories of growing up in a neighborhood where survival often took precedence over ambition. But instead of letting these differences discourage him, Malik used them as fuel. He threw himself into his studies, spending countless hours in the library poring over books and research papers. His professors noticed his dedication and began offering guidance, encouraging him to explore fields he hadn't considered before. One professor, Dr. Elena Martinez, took a particular interest in Malik's passion for technology and social justice. She introduced him to concepts like ethical AI development and using data science to address systemic inequalities. These ideas resonated deeply with Malik, igniting a spark within him that grew brighter with each passing day. Meanwhile, at Langston Tech, Malik discovered a world of innovation and creativity he had only dreamed of. The company was known for its cutting-edge solutions in artificial intelligence and renewable energy, and working alongside some of the brightest minds in the industry was both inspiring and humbling. Initially, Malik worried he wouldn't be able to keep up, but his natural curiosity and problem-solving skills earned him respect among his colleagues. He was assigned to a team developing apps aimed at improving access to education in underserved communities, a project that felt personal and meaningful to him. One afternoon, while presenting his ideas during a team meeting, Malik caught Richard Langston watching him intently from the back of the room. Richard rarely attended such meetings, preferring to leave operations to his executives. Yet here he was, observing, quietly. After the presentation, Richard approached Malik with a thoughtful expression. "You've got potential, kid," Richard said, his tone gruff but not unkind. "I can see why my daughter believes in you." Malik nodded, unsure of how to respond. He had always viewed Richard Langston as untouchable, an icon of success whose life seemed light years away from his own. To hear even a hint of approval from him was surreal. As Malik navigated his new reality, he remained grounded by frequent visits home. Despite his busy schedule, he made it a point to check in on his family regularly. His younger brother Jamal looked up to him now more than ever, proudly telling his friends about Malik's achievements. His sister Aliyah begged him to bring home stories of college life and tech projects, her eyes wide with wonder. And his mother, though visibly proud, reminded him to stay humble. "Don't forget where you come from," she told him one evening as they sat together on their apartment's tiny balcony. "This opportunity doesn't change who you are. It gives you a chance to help others like us." Her words stayed with Malik, echoing in his mind whenever self-doubt crept in. He vowed to use his education and experience to uplift those around him, just as Victoria and her family had done for him. Victoria, too, underwent her own transformation during this period. Spending time with Malik opened her eyes to perspectives she had never fully understood. Growing up wealthy, she had been shielded from the harsh realities faced by people in underprivileged communities. Through Malik, she learned about the daily, struggles of balancing work and school, the sacrifices families made to survive, and the resilience required to dream big despite limited resources. Inspired by what she saw, Victoria began advocating for causes close to Malik's heart. She convinced her father to allocate funds toward scholarships for students from low-income backgrounds and launched initiatives aimed at bridging the digital divide in underserved areas. Her efforts weren't without challenges. Some board members questioned her motives, accusing her of being naive or overly idealistic. But Victoria stood firm, drawing strength from Malik's example. "You taught me that courage isn't about having no fear," she told him once. "It's about doing the right thing even when you're scared. So I'm going to keep fighting, for you, for your community, and for anyone else who deserves a fair shot." Their bond deepened with every shared victory and challenge. What started as gratitude evolved into mutual admiration and trust. They celebrated milestones together: Malik's first successful app prototype, Victoria's campaign to provide free coding workshops in inner-city schools, and supported each other through setbacks. When Malik struggled with imposter syndrome during midterms, Victoria reminded him of his worth. When Victoria faced backlash for her advocacy work, Malik encouraged her to stay true to her values. By the end of the year, Malik's hard work began, paying off in tangible ways. His grades were stellar, earning him recognition on the dean's list. His internship performance impressed senior management, leading to offers for full-time positions after graduation. And perhaps most importantly, he found purpose in his pursuits, a desire to create technology that could make a real difference in people's lives. One evening, as Malik stood on the rooftop of Langston Tech's headquarters, overlooking the city skyline, Victoria joined him. The lights of Atlanta stretched endlessly before them, a tapestry of dreams and ambitions. "You know," she said softly, breaking the silence, "when I collapsed during that marathon, I thought my world was ending. Instead, it led me to you. And look at everything we've accomplished since then." Malik smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "Yeah, it's crazy how things turn out. I didn't think stopping would change anything. Just doing what felt right." Victoria turned to face him, her eyes shining with emotion. "That's the thing, Malik. Doing what feels right has the power to change everything. You saved me that day, but in a way, you've saved so much more. You've inspired me, challenged me, and shown me what real leadership looks like." Malik shook his head modestly. "We've helped each other. None of this would have happened without you believing in me." They stood there for a while longer, sharing a quiet moment of reflection. Both knew their journey was far from over. There were still obstacles to overcome and dreams to chase. But standing side by side, they felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. What neither of them realized was that their partnership was destined to grow beyond friendship and mentorship. Together, they would continue to break barriers, redefine success, and inspire countless others to believe in the power of compassion and determination. Their story was proof that sometimes the smallest act of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives in ways no one could predict. Years passed, and Malik's life transformed in ways he could have never imagined on that sweltering marathon day. What began as a single act of selflessness had blossomed into a journey filled with purpose, growth, and impact. The boy who once ran barefoot through the streets of his neighborhood was now a man standing at the forefront of change, using his education, skills, and experiences to uplift others. Yet despite his success, Malik remained deeply connected to his roots, a reminder of where he came from and why he had fought so hard to get here. After graduating top of his class, Malik accepted a full-time position at Langston Tech, working alongside some of the brightest minds in technology. His focus shifted toward creating tools and platforms designed to empower marginalized communities. He spearheaded projects like EdConnect, an app that provided free tutoring and mentorship to students in underserved areas, and Future Builders, a program aimed at teaching coding and entrepreneurship to teenagers. These initiatives weren't just professional achievements, they were personal missions, born out of Malik's own struggles and aspirations. Victoria continued to play an instrumental role in Malik's journey, though their dynamic evolved over time. No longer just a benefactor or mentor, she became a lifelong friend and collaborator. Together, they co-founded the Langston Johnson Foundation, an organization dedicated to breaking cycles of poverty through education, innovation, and community support. The foundation funded scholarships, built tech labs in low-income schools, and offered grants to aspiring entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Their partnership inspired headlines worldwide, earning them recognition as trailblazers committed to bridging gaps between privilege and opportunity. But for Malik, the true measure of success wasn't awards or accolades. It was seeing lives changed. One evening, during a visit to a high school in his old neighborhood, Malik found himself surrounded by eager students clamoring to learn about his story. Their faces lit up as he shared how running marathons had taught him discipline, how stopping to help Victoria had opened doors he never knew existed, and how believing in himself had allowed him to achieve his dreams. "Remember this," Malik told them, his voice steady but passionate. "Your circumstances don't define you. Your choices do. Every decision you make, whether it's helping someone in need or studying late into the night, is a step toward the future you want. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The room erupted in applause, and Malik felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for these young people who reminded him so much of his younger self. They were hungry for knowledge, determined to succeed, and brimming with untapped potential. Malik vowed to keep supporting them, not just financially, but by being a presence in their lives, showing them that someone believed in their abilities. As Malik's influence grew, so did his family's fortunes. With his income, he was finally able to provide the stability his mother had worked tirelessly to maintain. He bought a modest home for his family, ensuring they no longer had to worry about rent or utility bills. Jamal and Aliyah thrived academically, inspired by their older brother's example. For the first time in years, their mother smiled without the weight of financial stress shadowing her eyes. Though Malik cherished every milestone, there were moments when he paused to reflect on how far he'd come. Late one night, while sitting on the porch of his new house, he thought back to the marathon. The exhaustion, the girl lying unconscious on the pavement, the choice to stop when everyone else kept running. That moment had been a turning point, not just for him, but for countless others whose lives he touched indirectly. It reinforced a lesson he carried with him always. Kindness, no matter how small, has the power to create ripples that extend far beyond what we can see. Victoria, too, underwent profound changes. Her advocacy work, fueled by Malik's resilience and perspective, reshaped her understanding of wealth and responsibility. She transitioned from being the billionaire's daughter to becoming a leader in social reform, championing policies that addressed inequality and systemic barriers. Her father, initially skeptical of her efforts, eventually grew proud of the legacy she was building, one rooted in empathy and action rather than mere philanthropy. Their bond remained unshakable, built on mutual respect and shared values. Though they came from different worlds, Malik and Victoria discovered common ground in their desire to leave the world better than they found it. Friends often joked that their partnership was akin to a modern-day fairy tale, but both knew it was more than that. It was proof that humanity transcends boundaries, that compassion can unite even the most unlikely people, and that courage comes in many forms. One spring afternoon, Malik stood on stage at a prestigious conference hall, addressing hundreds of attendees as part of a panel on leadership and innovation. As he spoke about overcoming adversity, staying true to one's values and paying it forward, he spotted Victoria sitting in the front row, beaming with pride. Nearby, his mother Jamal and Aliyah watched intently, tears glistening in their eyes. In that moment, Malik realized something profound. Success wasn't measured by titles or bank accounts. It was measured by the lives you touched and the legacy you left behind. When the event ended, Malik stepped off stage to thunderous applause. Victoria rushed over, pulling him into a tight hug. "You killed it out there," she said, laughing. "I'm so proud of you." Malik grinned, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "We did it together, Vicky. None of this would have..." happened without you." She rolled her eyes playfully at the nickname, but didn't argue. Instead, she linked her arm through his as they walked toward the exit, chatting animatedly about future projects and ideas. Behind them, Malik's family trailed along, soaking in the atmosphere of celebration and achievement. For the first time in years, they felt truly whole, not because of material comforts, but because of the love and unity that bound them. That evening, as Malik sat under the stars with his loved ones, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the dusty streets of Atlanta to the gleaming halls of academia and industry, every twist and turn had shaped him into the person he was today. He thought about Victoria, whose belief in him had sparked a chain reaction of opportunities. He thought about his family, whose unwavering support had anchored him through storms. And he thought about the countless strangers whose lives he hoped to improve through his work. Life, Malik realized, was a series of interconnected moments, a tapestry woven from choices, sacrifices, and acts of kindness. Sometimes those threads led to unexpected places, binding hearts and destinies in ways no one could predict. On that fateful marathon day, Malik had chosen compassion over competition. Little did he know that decision would ripple outward, touching lives across generations. And as he gazed up at the endless expanse of stars, Malik whispered a silent promise, to himself, to his family, and to the world. "I will never stop running toward a brighter future."